Today's my topic is capping and polyadenylation. So basically, RNA processing is done in prokaryotes as well as eukaryotes, but it is more complicated in eukaryotes rather than prokaryotes because in prokaryotes, RNA is made up in the cytosol, and all the necessary genome and gene which they code is already present at the cytosol, so they don't have to do other things like eukaryotes have done. But in eukaryotes, transcription is takes place inside the nucleus. So when the RNA is made up of DNA, it contains two type of units, which is exons and introns. In which exons are the only one coding element. Introns don't code for protein. Uh, they made in uh, mRNA is made in the nucleus. So for the transporting the mRNA uh, from nucleus to cytosol, there is a three process which is involved. First one is capping, second one is polyadenylation, and third one is splicing. Uh, Ma'am, can you change? First one is capping. So basically, it is we can call it as a cap, which is added at the 5 prime end of RNA, uh, because only because of 5 prime end of mRNA, it is also called as the 5 prime modification. Uh, 5 prime modification. Uh, the cap involves the 7 methyl guanosine. Uh, Cap involves the basically uh, we can call it as a 7 methyl guanosine as a capping enzyme, and the speciality of this capping process is 5 prime to 5 prime linkage, which is not we can see in other things. Basically it is 5 prime to 3 prime linkage, but here is a 5 prime to 5 prime linkage because of protection, because if it contains 5 prime to 3 prime direction, uh, nucleus activity takes place, and it further get can't get further cannot do its work. uh, Change from hmm. Importance of the capping is first importance of the capping is protection. uh, because of nucleic acid, when the nucleic acid ends are free, it is used for the nucleus activity. So for the protection of nucleus activity, example ribonuclease, the cap at the 5 end is required, as I mentioned before. uh, Cap also helps the mRNA to bind with the ribosomes because it contains uh, some bindings, specific binding proteins, which helps mRNA to bind with the ribosomes. uh, for the it When mRNA gets matured, it comes in the cytoplasm. An initiation takes place. Uh, for the uh, translation initiation of translation takes place. It requires the 5 prime for the translation. It requires the 5 prime capping. Uh, for export of mRNA to nucleus to cytoplasm, capping is required, and it takes place through the nuclear pore. Uh, Mechanism of the capping is uh, so we all can see here 5 prime end of RNA with triphosphate group. It contains 3 phosphate and first nucleotide of mRNA, in which the phosphate is labeled as alpha, beta, and gamma. So there are many capping enzymes which are written in blue in color. They all are capping enzyme. Uh, the first enzyme is phos- phospho phospho I'm sorry, phosphohydrolase. I'm sorry, phosphohydrolase, uh, which removes the gamma phosphate from the first nucleotide, and removal of phosphate takes place. Uh, then only two phosphate groups are attached to the nucleotide. Then guanylyl transferase adds the substrate in the presence of guanylyl transferase uh, with the substrate of GTP. Uh, GTP it release the pyrophosphate group, uh, which and guanine attach only guanylyl monophosphate attached to the nucleotide. So basically, we can call it as guanylyl transferase as a capping enzyme because it gives the it 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 is a guano monophosphate which attach the monophosphate to the nucleotide. Uh, guan, guanine 7 methyl transferase uh, adds the methyl group at the 7 nitrogen of the cap and uses adomate. Adomate is a methyl group which act as a methyl co-transfer reaction. Uh, adomate is then converted into HCY, which is homocysteine, and the further reaction is 2' of methyl transferase, which adds methyl to sugar at the 2' end, and that is optional. Sometimes they're methylated and sometimes they're not. And the second step is polyadenylation. Uh, polyadenylation is also called as 3' modification. Uh, we, it add a poly A tail at the 3' end of RNA. It involves, ma'am, it involves two steps, which is cleavage of mRNA and addition of poly A tail, which is polyadenylation. Uh, the first one is uh, to understand polyadenylation, we have to understand cleavage and polyadenylation. So, ma'am, slide. Uh, so there is a template DNA strand. Uh, there is a RNA polymerase 2, and transcription is taking place at the direction of blue arrow. Uh, we all can see here there is a cap at the 5' end. mRNA is synthesized in the sequence enzyme complex bind with the sequence with the required for the cleavage and polyadenylation. Uh, we can see here there is an enzyme complex which get attached to the AUA unit, which is further get nucleated by the endonuclease activity. Therefore, the RNA polymerase 2 and remaining RNA get cleaved, or only the substrate that enzyme complex and mRNA get attached to the mRNA. After that, polyadenylation polymerase, with the help of ATP, it generates the uh, poly A tail, and the synthesis of uh, poly A tail takes place. After that, polyadenylation is in ma'am slam change करो. In mechanical polyadenylation, there are specific proteins which are involved in the uh, cleavage of mRNA and polyadenylation of mRNA. There are specific proteins which are bind to AUA, and there is a specific unit called CSTF, which binds guanine uracil. Guanine uracil. Uh, we can see here the both proteins are connected with each other. Uh, there is a mRNA prime 3 caused by CF1 and CF2, which is the cleavage factor 1 and 2. The cut, it gives the cut for the DNA and RNA. RNA gets looped by this CF1 and CF2. So cleavage of pre-mRNA takes place, which is cut during because of CF1 and CF2, which is cleavage factor 1 and 2. After that, addition of poly A takes place with the help of PAB2 proteins. It binds uh, poly with the help of PAB2 proteins. It binds poly A tail is created. Uh, CPSF and PAP proteins are bind with each other because of PAP decides how how it can be grow further because we can call it as it decides the length of poly A chain. So because of this, poly A tail gets created. Uh, Cleavage of pre-mRNA takes place. After that, polyadenylation takes place. Uh, After that, ma'am, second slide. Second, with importance of polyadenylation is it protects the 3' mRNA from ribonuclease uh, base. Poly gives the stability to mRNA. We can call it as PA. Poly A chain gives the stability to mRNA. How the poly A chain can be? It provides the longer stability to the mRNA. It helps in initiation of translation, which is same as capping and uh, adenylation. They both help in initiation of translation. Uh, that's it, ma'am. Thank you.
Did you have some internet issues?
Ma'am, I'm not audible.
नहीं वॉइस ब्रेक हो क्या रहा था
मैम वो वाईफाई बहुत स्लो चल रहा है.
अच्छा ठीक है नेक्स्ट कौन है
पता नहीं
निधि
ओके
ma'am.
निधि मेनन राइट
Yes, ma'am. Aishwarya, ma'am.
Yes.
Can I share my screen? You
Sure.
have to make me the co-host.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ma'am, is it visible?
It's coming. Wait. Yes, it is visible.
Good morning, teachers and friends. My topic for today is splicing. So, splicing is basically a formation of a mature functional RNA wherein the introns are removed and the exons are spliced together because the exons contain this exon is what makes the future mRNA. Therefore, the introns need to be spliced out so that the exons can be joined together. Now, following the capping mechanism, these introns are excised and the exons on the end, that are the flanking exons, are connected together. Now, this gene splicing is a very precise method that is seen for formation of mature RNA. In this case, the exons are never shuffled; they are always in their same place, due to which you can see a precise formation of a mature RNA. Now, when we talk about splicing, there are supposed to be splice sites that help the splicing mechanism to take place. So there is one splice site on the 5' end that is at the GU codon. A 3' splice site present at the other end, a branch site which is rich in adenine, and a poly Y sequence which is rich in pyrimidine. Now, splicing mechanism is also called as is basically two trans esterification reactions. Now, trans esterification basically means an alcohol reacting, an alcohol reacting with a ester in presence of acid or base, forming another ester. Now, in this case, when you see the OH group from the branch point cleaves the phosphate nucleophilically, which is present at the 5' end of the exon, and it cuts the intron. Cuts the intron, liberating the exon side. The OH is again attached. The OH is then attached to the 5' end. Now the OH on the 3' terminal again nucleophilically attacks the phosphodiester uh, present on the 3' splice site. This forms the second trans-esterification reaction, and due to which the intron is given out and the splice exons are joined together by ligase. There's always a phosphate present in the splice exon, and the introns found are always in lariat form. Now, cell splicing introns. Cell splicing introns basically are those which don't have any protein enzymes involved in the reaction. They're mostly of two types, group 1 and group 2. In group 1, it is found in some nuclear mitochondria and chloroplast genes, which code for rRNAs, mRNAs, and tRNAs. The group 2 is found in the primary transcripts of mitochondria, chloroplast mRNA, which is basically in fungi, algae, or plants. Now, group 1 introns. In group 1 introns, you see the 3' OH group of the guanosine forms a phosphodiester bond at the 5' end of the intron, liberating the 5' end of the exon. Then this OH attaches itself to the terminal end of the 5'. This OH again goes and attached to the 3' end of the intron, which again liberates the intron present over there. And this is how the splice introns are formed together. After this, the 3' end of the OH group of intron forms a phosphodiester bond at the phosphate of the nucleotide, and this gives rise to a cyclic intron that we see here. Now, group 2 intron is almost as similar, as in the process is almost as similar to that of group 1 introns, but the only difference that is seen is that adenine is the one that gives the OH group instead of guanosine. As you can see, the adenine, the OH group is forming a bond with the 5' and then with the 3', giving out the introns. Now, group 2 introns and spliceosomes are almost similar. So spliceosomes are basically a large protein complex that is seen. It is made up of specialized RNA proteins that are basically small nuclear riboproteins, are called as snRNPs. They each have 100 to 200 nucleotides and are known as small nuclear RNAs. They are basically actually 6 uracil-rich small nuclear RNAs, which are U1, U2, U3, U4, U5, and U6. But in this case, U3 is not of that importance as that of U1, U2, U4, U5, and U6. Now, when you see the mechanism of spliceosome, the U1 attaches to the 5' splice site, and the U2 attaches to the branch point that is seen here. Now, this U1 and U2 recruits U4, U6, and U5, forming a complex spliceosome. This complex spliceosome triggers a conformational change in U1 and U4, which causes them to be liberated out. Now, after this, the U2 pushes the branch point towards the 5' slice. So basically, there is trans-esterification again happening. That is the OH, the O group forms the diester bond with the P, with the phosphate. So sorry. And then the OH group found on the 5' splice site again attacks the phosphate present on the 3' splice site, which concludes, which makes the second translocation reaction. Now here, after this, the splice exons are formed and a lariat intron is given out along with U2, U5 and U6. With the help of a debranching enzyme, the lariat intron can be converted into a linear intron. Now alternative splicing. Alternative splicing is basically where the exons are deliberately skipped. It can be seen in metazoas or, but it is very prevalently seen in the vertebrates. Now in this case, either a single amino acid protein, either a single amino acid residue or a whole entire functional domain can be inserted or deleted to their own will. But here you can see is when there is a stop codon that comes into a play, which can shorten the length of the whole polypeptide chain. This is basically seen in the sex determination of Drosophila. Now, when you see here in transformer pRNA, the U2AF, which is an auxiliary factor, joins the exons 1 to 2 and 3. But what happens is there is a UAG stop codon that is found, due to which the exons cannot be recognized. Now, the very typical character of a TRA protein is that it needs to identify or recognize all the 3 exons for it to form a protein. So now here, since there are exons that cannot be recognized due to the stop codon, there is no protein that has been synthesized. Now in case of female, there is a SXL protein that is found here, which basically blocks the stop codon. In the sense it skips the codons, due to which the exons are functional, and because of this the TRA protein is formed. Now when we look at double sex pre-mRNA, there are 6 exons present, but in this case the 4th exon is blocked by a blocker, due to which the 5th and the 6th exon, they are skipped or they do not function. Now what happens in female is the TRA protein that was found previously, it goes and sits on the 4th exon wherein the blocker is present, and it blocks the blocker itself, because of which the 5 and the 6 one start to function, and therefore a DXX protein is formed. So basically this is how we can differentiate the sex between in the Drosophila species. Now another type of splicing that I've mentioned here is trans splicing. Trans splicing is basically where 2 exons of different RNA molecules can be spliced together. Now they have something called as trypanosomes, which are 35 nucleotide coding, and they have something called as a leader sequence RNA. The difference here is that instead of a lariat intron that is formed, the structure here is of Y-shaped compared to the lariat circular shape. Now here you can see the OH group at the branch point is attacking the P group at the 3' splice site, which is forming a complex here as an intron complex, and the OH is attached to the 5' splice site. Now this OH at the 3' terminal again attacks the phosphate at the exon end, and this liberates out the whole intron, giving a Y-shaped intron and a leader and exon spliced mRNA. Now the significance here you can see is basically with the help of trans splicing, you can see new exon formation as there are 2 different RNA molecules involved. This can help in rapid protein evolution, and it can help in diversity and different variations. Now through alternate splicing, there can be a single gene that is encoding several proteins that could have many different functions. So in all, splicing can be a very important method for the further processing of RNA. Thank you. Ma'am, it's done. Ma'am, I'll stop the sharing.
Yes.
Yeah, at least clap for each other.
Pankaj,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sharing a PPT.
Okay.
Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. But not in slideshow, ma'am.
Yes, yes, I'll do that.
Okay. So, my topic for today is ribozyme. Next slide, ma'am. So, what are ribozymes basically? So, ribozymes are nothing but RNA molecules with catalytic function. That means that RNA can also perform function, catalytic function as that of enzyme. So we only knew that uh, 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 enzymes which were basically made up of protein can only perform the catalytic function. So we only know that the protein was the only biomolecule which was able to perform catalytic function. But discovery of ribozyme proved that RNA molecule can also perform uh, catalytic function. So this discovery was crucial, and this led scientists to think that the first life on Earth might have evolved from RNA molecule, and this thought contributed to the RNA world hypothesis. So ribozymes are basically catalytic RNA with catalytic function. These ribozymes also require metal ions like potassium and magnesium for for their catalytic property. They usually participate in RNA processing reaction, for example, RNA splicing and protein synthesis. Ma'am, next slide. Ma'am, next slide, please. So let's understand this RNA world hypothesis. So RNA world hypothesis states that in what is the belief of the RNA world hypothesis is that the life was first evolved from RNA molecule, and RNA have the ability to copy itself without any assistance from other molecule. So that is so as we know the central dogma that is DNA to RNA and RNA to protein. But in RNA world hypothesis, this dogma, the central dogma is different. It is RNA from RNA to RNA and from RNA to protein. So in RNA world hypothesis, there is no need of uh, DNA and protein molecule, because in RNA world hypothesis they suggest that RNA can perform functions, catalytic function as that of protein, and can carry genetic information as that of DNA. So there are some evidence for to prove to support this RNA world hypothesis. Now, as we know from the discovery of ribozyme, RNA too can perform catalytic functions and can drive reactions as like protein, and it can also carry genetic information uh, as we know in viruses. So since we have the evidence that RNA can perform both of this function, so this is the overall thought of the RNA world hypothesis, that RNA was the first biomolecule from which the life evolved before DNA and protein. So this was all about RNA world hypothesis. So let's focus on our main topic, that is ribozyme. Next slide. So as you can see here, so there is difference. The difference of RNA world hypothesis and the actual. So in RNA world hypothesis, you can see there is a formation of RNA to RNA, and from that RNA, protein is formed, which is different from our central dogma. Ma'am, next slide. Okay, so these are the some of the ribosome that I will be discussing. First is group 1 splicing intron, second is group 2 self splicing intron, and third is 23S RNA large subunit of ribosome of prokaryote. That is nothing but our peptidyl transferase that then RNase P. Ma'am, next slide. Okay, so the first ribosome that I will be discussing is group 1 intron. So what are introns basically? So introns are basically non-coding region of the RNAs. So there are different type of introns, but this group one and group two introns are quite special. Why they are special? Because the other introns, require complex protein, complex protein machineries for their splicing. But whereas this group one introns, they do not require any protein machinery or protein complexes for the splicing. So they are self-splicing intron. Okay, and they do not require energy, so they do not require there is no utilization of energy molecule like ATP. So this was basic introduction of group 1 intron. Let's see the actual mechanism of group 1 intron splicing. Next slide. Okay, so in the given diagram you can see there are three phases of uh, RNA. You can see in the first is the primary transcript. Uh, let's focus on the first primary transcript. So the primary transcript, as you can see in the primary transcript, the yellow portion represents the exons, and the blue portion represents the intron. So now let's see the mechanism of cell splicing of group 1 intron. So the basic mechanism of cell splicing in group 1 and group 2 intron is same. That is two nucleophilic attack. So in this cell splicing introns, the basic mechanism is two nucleophilic attacks. So there will be two nucleophilic attacks, and which will result in removal of this intron. So let's see the first nucleophilic attack. How does the first nucleophilic attack happens? So as you can see, so the first nucleophilic attack is by 3' hydroxyl group of guanosine. So the first nucleophilic attack is by external guanosine, 3' guanosine. So so this you can see the external guanosine hydroxyl group, 3' hydroxyl group is attacking the uh, attacking the phosphodiester bond between the exon and intron ends, and it is breaking this phosphodiester bond between UNA and forming a new bond between guanine and adenine of intron. So what happens is it breaks the phosphodiester bond among exon between the intron and exon, but it forms a new bond, new phosphodiester bond with the intron. So as you can see in the next step, the guanosine is has formed the phosphodiester bond with the intron, and leaving the hydroxyl group, leaving a hydroxyl group on the exon end. Okay, so in the second step, what happens is the the open end of the exon with hydroxyl group act as a nucleophile, act as a second nucleophile, and attacks the other end of the intron, which again results in breaking of phosphodiester bond between exons and intron, and then so one phosphodiester bond is broken between exon and intron, but then the new phosphodiester bond is formed between exons and exon, which results in splicing. As you can see in the last the mature RNA, the exons are sorry, the introns are removed and exons are joined. So this was the basic mechanism, that was nothing but attack of two nucleophile, two nucleophilic attacks, which resulted in breaking of phosphodiester bond and forming of new phosphodiester bond. So there was no requirement of energy. There was no utilization of ATP molecule as such, because the bond was one in at the one end, the bond was broken, on the other end the bond was formed. So there was no as such utilization of energy. Okay, next, ma'am, next slide. Okay, so this is the actual magnified view, we can say, the how the transesterification reaction was occurring. So as you can see here, the external guanosine, which is in the pink box, is attacking the exons and intron bond, phosphodiester bond between exons and intron. So as you can see, the uh, in the guanosine 3' hydroxyl group, which is a nucleophile. So what are nucleophile? Basically, they are nucleus or proton loving species. So they are, so this 3' hydroxyl group attacks on the phosphodiester bond and breaks the bond between exons and intron on and forms bond with intron. In the next diagram, you can see it has broken the bond between exons and intron, and form the bond with intron. Okay, so and in the second diagram, you can see the green box, green box with hydroxyl group. This is in the next step act as a nucleophile for breaking the other end of the intron. So this was the basic mechanism. This was the overall basic mechanism of group 1 splicing. Ma'am, next slide. Okay, so so the group 2 introns also have the same overall more or less same mechanism, that is at two nucleophilic attack. So there will be two nucleophilic attack in this group 2 intron splicing as well, but the source is different. In group 1 intron, the source of nucleophilic attack was external guanosine, whereas in group 2 intron, the the nucleophile is from the it's in the own sequence of intron. There is adenine at 2' hydroxyl group. So here the source of nucleophile is 2' hydroxyl group of adenine. So as you know, the 3' hydroxyl groups are not free, and they are bound for the phosphodiester bond. But as we know, it is a ribonucleotide, so there is a OH group in the second position also, and that OH is utilized in nucleophilic attack. So this uh, OH group uh, of the intron attacks the phosphodiester bond between intron and exon, and uh, and forms new phosphodiester bond, which leads to formation of this lariat structure. And in the second diagram, you can see the newly formed hydroxyl